Okay, welcome to round one of our game, and we are on the play, and we have one land, double cutter. We are going to keep here because we have the Dragon Rage Chandler, the Bauble, so we have additional draws to find our second land. Keep in mind we have no protection in form of days or force of will, and we even have no interaction in form of lightning bolt. We have to rely that our deck is strong enough to draw into the mid game, and we are starting here with the Dragon Rage Chandler, the Bauble trigger, and see what it will find us. We put the Brazen Borrower in the graveyard, so we have at least now three types in form of land, artifact, and creature, and have additional draw on our opponent's step, and our opponent shows us a back to basic. So we are playing here against some kind of control. Maybe it's kind of Jeskai, we will see. Our opponent is starting here with fetching a basic island, which is committed to the back to basics, and he's opening strong with Tamio. We have no resources to fight against the Tamio other than the board, so we miss our land drop and playing the Ponder to find our second land and have additional type in our graveyard. So we pass on the first Ponder and we see a Wasteland, a Ponder, and a Lightning Bolt. So all these cards are not what we need, so we shuffle them back in any order and take a natural draw and miss completely. So we are going to attack here with our Dragon Rage Chandler and have only a days up, so we can't really fight against a Brainstorm. If our opponent is going to flip Tamio, we have to commit to the board and play our second Dragon Rage Chandler, and even if we draw land, Delver of Secrets on top to just fight through the Tamio on the board. But we will see what our opponent is doing here and what we are drawing. And keep in mind, if we play the days, we have also additional trigger, and our opponent is playing the Brainstorm as predicted, so we are not fighting over that. And our opponent is thinking about what cards to put back. He has a shuffle available, so it's a pretty decent Brainstorm on his point of view. So the Tamio is flipping as predicted and moves to 4 loyalty counters, and we'll see our opponent is following up with a fetch, and we'll see what he is fetching. And he searched for a plateau and what's the blow chest. We are going to daze it here because we need our threat, and keep in mind that our opponent was fetching here on a dual land. We see a force of will. We will keep that one because we have our land drop for the next turn because of the days. So we can make our land drop, we have a counter, and can apply another clock in form of maybe Dragon Rage Chandler or Delver, but I think playing out the second Dragon Rage Chandler is better because we can pitch the additional Delver easier into Force of Wills. And keep in mind, with the dual land, our opponent has the ability to play back to basics, but with a dual land on his side, I'm not sure whether that's the plan. And he plays a Prismatic Vista, so he is likely going to fetch for a Plains, which he did. And now he's not playing the back to basics, okay? He is playing a Thundertrap Trainer. So we can think to fight over this, but we can also counter the card which is coming from the Thundertrap Trainer, and the trainer does not fly. So our Dragon Rage Chandler, if our opponent doesn't find any kind of interaction, will run the Tamio down in flying mode, but with the Thundertrap Trainer on the battlefield, our opponent has a wizard for a Flame of Honor, and he shows us a Force of Will. So At this point of the game, we have the info about 2 cards in our opponent's hand. He has the Force of Will with Back to Basics to pitch, and he has 1 mana open and 3 unknown cards. We find our second land, and now we can proceed with Core Steel Cutter to force the action. And that's what we are going to do here. So we have 2 survey triggers, and we'll see if our opponent is willing to fight over it. The second Force of Will on our side of view, we don't need it. We need more cards in action. Preordain, I think Bauble is decent, so we can keep this on top and see if our opponent is willing to fight over the Core Steel Cutter, and he does. He countered it with Force of Negation and pitching the Back to Basics, so he now has the Force in hand. I'm not quite sure why he used the Force of Negation, but maybe to protect his own spell. But he gave up on the Back to Basics, and we are attacking Titamio down. So if nothing happens, it will be killed and removed from the battlefield if our opponent has no swords to plowshares and he does not have any kind of interaction. And that's the state of the game. So now opponent has maybe can play Flame to Enter, but he's opening with Brainstorm. So I'm not really scared of this if our opponent doesn't show us any kind of fetch land. And our opponent took his time to consider his options, what cards to put back with the Brainstorm. And he found a fetch land in form of Flooded Strand. He's going to 13 life points, has 3 cards in hands. One is Force of Will, and here comes the Tamio. So I'm not scared about this. Our opponent shows us the Brainstorm. So he has Force and an unknown card, maybe a blue card in hand. And the Tamio doesn't add any kind of additional wizard. So it's not really needed for fighting over. So we are doing the same as last turn, applying our pressure in form of Core Steel Cutter. And we found a Murktide. We will keep that on top because our opponent used some Swords of Plowshares before. And he found no counter. And we are applying the Bauble, taking the trigger on the Murktide. Not really helpful, but as is as it is. And with the Bauble we get a token. We keep the Murktide on top, so we can next turn apply our own Murktide if nothing will change. And I'm going here to draw into the Murktide if we need to force in our opponent's turn that we get 2 fresh looks on the top of our library. The attack of the token is not necessary. He can block it easily down with Tamio. He does, but holding it back is not. It saves 1 damage from Tunnel Trap Trainer. So I'm taking the risk here if our opponent is maybe scared or something else. Okay. Our opponent took his turn and we saw a dress down. So if our opponent is playing dress down in our turn, it will shrink our Dragon Rage Chandler and he can play it even after they have to attack to maybe trade with Tunnel Trap Trainer or save some kind of damage. And our opponent is deciding to attack with the timer to get the clue trigger. So he really relies on the strength of dress down. I'm not a huge fan of it, but that's how our opponent played here, and he's playing the dress down our upkeep. I'm also not a fan of this because it will save our Dragon Mage Chandler, and our opponent is now too committed to have a mass removal in the mainboard in form of Wrath of the Skies or maybe a Supreme Verdict. Because we will keep our Dragon Mage Chandler. They do not have to attack into the Tunnel Trap Trainer. We can also consider it to push 1 more damage through. But first things first, we try to counter, get 2 fresh looks on the top of our library, and see what our opponent has to say about that. And he decided to use the known force. I think it's fine. it's a good spot to get rid of the force of will, because the dress down will not change the battlefield immediately. So our opponent has to have a good turn after this one. I'm thinking here about the land. The land will enable us to play at least the Murktide and the Delver. So if we do that, we get an additional token from the cutter, because we played one spell already in form of Force of Will. And it's a kind of all in, I think. But that's the only way we can play. If we put the land back, then we have another spell, so maybe we can draw into days. But I think land is fine. It gives us more options. We can surveil, we can apply a Delver, a Murktide, or neither of those things, or we can re-equip the cutter. So I think the land is handy here, and we can now decide how to structure our turn and our next turn. So the first things is what we want to play out. I think leading with the Delver is okay, because we get the token for free, and we can now think about applying the Murktide to the board. And on this point of the game, I'm thinking our opponent needs exactly Supreme Verdict. A single swords will not help, but first things first, we attack, and I decide here to push the damage through, so our opponent can trade with the Dragon Witch Chandler. I think the damage is more valuable at this point, because we have 6 damage, so our opponent has to block, and if he goes to 1, he can't fetch and can't pitch or play a Force of Will. So I think sacrificing maybe the Dragon Witch Chandler in the Turn Trap Turner is absolutely fine if our opponent goes after this to 1 life. And our opponent has the risk that maybe if we have a Rainstorm, we can trigger the powers ability. So he decides to play it safe and block the token without trample, which is absolutely fine. And on top of that, he plays Swords to Plowshares on the other token in respect of the powers triggers. And those Swords to Plowshares were really nice, because now we know the coast is clear for our Murktide. So good point in not playing it before combat, playing it after combat. And here we are playing the Murktide regions. You see, I'm taking my time to really pick the cards and to not shrink the Dragon Rage Chandler, because I absolutely lost track of the resolved dress down. So no matter how many cards I pitch, it will be just a 3-3. I missed that. I was really focused on playing the game here. So I'm just cross-checking that it's really only a 3-3 Murktide. But I think for our purposes, it's fine. It can block the Tamiyo, and it will help with the cutter to apply 4 damage with trample on the air. So our opponent desperately attacks here. Get a clue is maybe sacrificing the clue to find any kind of answer. I'm not sure what card he is digging for. So even a Flame of Honor will not help at this stage of the game. His out is only Supreme Verdict. So I'm not really sure, and now he will concede. So we move into this sideboarding game, and we are facing Jeskai Control in the kind of wizard shell, so I think Pyroblast is a good fine card. And I'm considering what we don't want. I think here plenty cards which we can trim. I think the Brazen is not doing much in this matchup. We doesn't see any kind of Murktide, and also the Unholy Heat is not a quite good card. So those are 2 easy cuts. I think the days is fine. You can also make an argument for cutting down on days, especially on the draw. So I think it's okay to cut 1 to 2 dazes. I'm also taking the Hydroblast package against the Flame of Anno, and maybe against some own Pyroblast. And I'm trimming 1 daze and at least 1 bolt, because bolt is decent, it's not really good. It's necessary to push the damage through, and I'm cutting another daze. So cutting 2 dazes, 1 bolt, 1 Unholy Heat, and 1 Brazen Borer in exchange for our 5 blasts. I think it's fine. I think boarding Force of Negation is overcommitted. You can even make an argument for cutting down Force of Will, but I think it's not our plan. We can do it. but I think keeping a force is pretty good. And we are on the draw. We have Force, Brainstorm, and Pyroblast. So 4 lands is pretty much. So you can make a good argument for taking the mulligan here. But I think it's also okay to keep this hand because on the strength of Brainstorm, we have a fetch land available, so we can improve our hand in getting rid of those lands in exchange for action cards in form of Delve of Secrets, Dragon Rage Chandler, or even a Cutter. And I think having one more land is fine, because if we mulligan and have the exact same hand with 3 lands, we have the same outcome. So I think it's okay to hold, and also we have a Pyroblast for maybe turn 1 Tamio. So I think it's fine. So we drew another land which is not good, and we are just passing, playing it patience, because we can decide if we want to surveil at the end of our opponent's turn, if we use the Pyroblast or play the Brainstorm. So we have more options available, and I think leading on the surveillance is okay. We do not have a play on our turn, so there is not much for mana efficiency set. We bin the Wasteland, and we do another Pyroblast and just passing the turn, so we can maybe counter a Tunnel Trap Trainer here. We can play the Brainstorm and improve our hand, and our opponent is also playing the Draw Go game, and we are leading on a Brainstorm. So there's no need for countering and getting rid of our lands and taking the shuffle here. There's also an argument for shuffling now and in our turn, because we saw back to basics, so we have to respect that and get at least one island. And now I'm fetching in our upkeep, because if our opponent had a response, we would be able to play the Pyro. In our upkeep, we can do it more easily, so there's no timing strength here, so it's pretty easy to do it that way. We drew Delve of Secrets. It's a clock, it's decent, it's not overwhelmingly, but it will get the job done, and our opponent needs to do something about it, maybe Swords to Plowshares or a prismatic ending. We will see. And our opponent is now starting in casting spells, so fetching 1 basic planes. So I think basic island will follow. And our opponent is taking his time here, considering his options, and is leading on a ponder. So there's no need to counter or interact with a ponder. We have a Delver of Secrets, we have Pyroblast, Hydroblast, so we have a good wall of defense, as to speak. And we just make sure to flip our Delver, and even if we miss, we can use our fetch land and get away of the card which we maybe don't want. So we have likely a little divining top on our hands, and our opponent is responding on with a dress down. I think it's decent. I think there's no need in fighting over a dress down, because we have no insurance that our diver will flip. So it's a blind flip, and getting rid of our Power Blast is not worth the trade-off. So I think it's fine. So our diver would have been flipped with the force, but I think it's okay to play it more conservatively and not fighting over the dress down. We want to fight about maybe Tunnel Trap Trainer or Flame of Honor or even a Murktide or Teferi. We don't know our opponent's full configuration, so I think it's not necessary to fight over dress down. So our diver will stick on the battlefield and applied his 1 point of damage. And if our opponent will not do anything, we have a clock, and it's only a matter of time whether the Delver will flip or not. And our opponent fetches his full lands. He fetched a mountain, and we'll see maybe another island, or it's the plateau. So I'm not sure why he's fetching full. There's no need for that. And he's leading with the mountain, so maybe a Pyroblast on Delver or Lightning Bolt, I'm not sure. okay, he's applying a Magus of the Moon, so a Blood Moon effect, which will make sense in why our opponent fetched his full lands here. So we have the option to fight against it with Pyroblast on the stack, or we can just make it resolved. And we have a lightning board, so there's no need in fighting over the stack. We can try to get it rid of lightning board. If our opponent counters, we can use Pyroblast or even play Hydroblast on it after it resolves. So if we can kill it with lightning board, it's a huge card advantage, and our opponent is fine with that. And we'll see what our Delver of Secret brings us, and it reveals a volcanic island, so we will not show the volcanic island, and fetching here our library, so we do not draw the volcanic island here, so it's a good sequence to do it that way. And we draw another Delver of Secret, which is decent. It's not overwhelming, but we have polluted data on the battlefield, so we can at least take 2 looks at the top of our library, and we play the second Delver of Secrets and hope that at least one of them will flip on our next turn. And keep in mind, our opponent is, even with the 1/1 threats, is at 13 life points. So if the Delver will flip, we have maybe a turn, 2-turn clock. And our opponent is casting the Tunnel Trap Trainer, and he has mana open for Flame of Honor. So I'm really willing to fight over the Tunnel Trap Trainer with the Pyroblast on the stack. So I do not want that our opponent is able to find the Flame of Honor, because then he can bury us in card advantage. And he's following up with a 3 mana spell. And he's casting Flood of the Skies for 1, which is pretty good. So we know it's in the deck, or maybe it came from the sideboard. And we are going to counter it. And we are pitching the second Force of Will, so we can counter the following up by Hydroblast or by Pyroblast. So even if our opponent has a Pyroblast here, which he had, we can counter this one with Hydroblast. So, and hope it will stick. And it does. So the Flood of the Skies is countered. We have a Pyroblast as a backup, and just have to make sure that our Delver will flip. And we see a Scalding Tarn on the first Delver of Secrets, so we decline, fetch, and try our luck on the second one, getting a Volcanic Island. And we see also a Flooded Strand. It's not amazing. We are drawing a lot into lands here. So we have 5 lands, the same number as our control player. And we are the tempo or the aggro deck. But it is as it is, and we just have to play it out. Our opponent has 2 cards in hand. He finds a Ponder. And here I'm willing to fight over the Ponder, because I think our opponent is out of gas. He used his Flood of the Skies, and we really have to make the timing window narrow so that we can outrun our opponent. And our opponent, as last card, had also the Supreme Verdict, so there's not much we can do about it. And just draw some action, and we draw another land. So we have 6 lands out of our 19. Keep in mind that 2 lands are gone in our graveyard, so we are really drawing hard into lands. And from this point of the game, we will not play any more lands. And our opponent finds a Flame of Honor, empty, just drawing 2 cards. It's okay. We just need to draw a Brainstorm, a Murktide, or a Cutter, and we drew a Lightning Bolt, which is not good, but it is what it is. We can't do anything about it, and we just have to pass the turn here. And our opponent has now a good timing window to draw some action. He draws a Brainstorm, so he has 3 fresh cards, and his only goal is just to find a threat in form of Tunnel Trap Trainer, or maybe even a Murktide, and so on. So we really need to hit our next draw steps. So we have plenty of cards remaining. Even Cutter is fine with the bolt, and we do another Volcanic Island. So it's not amazing. We had 7 lands, 5 lands on the battlefield and 2 lands on hand. So we just have to pass the turn and pray that our opponent drawers empty, and we will find a brainstorm. So there's good chances that we will find a brainstorm. We have plenty remaining in our deck. We have the preordain, we have the ponder, so we have lots of cards which can do and search for cards or shuffle. So we have to play patience, play to our outs. Our opponent is at 10 life, so maybe if we find a little bit of cutter action, it would be fine. And we find a Murktide. I think at this point of the game, it's not really likely that it will stick. Our opponent has 5 mana up, so he can hardcast a Force of Will, even Pyroblast, Swords to Plowshares. So I'm not thinking that will come true, but we have to play to our outs. And even if our opponent has a Swords to Plowshares, it will gain us at least some life, and he did. So we gain full 8 life, and the life here can matter because the life is a kind of exchange resource. So if our opponent is a deck that has no fast clock, so if we have a little bit more time, we can draw into direct damage in form of lightning bolt and maybe some sort of cutter. But our opponent leads here with a Tamio and Brainstorm, so we have to use our lightning bolt. So our odds of closing the game with direct damage are literally 0 at this point of the game. But we can't get our opponent to flip Tamio. It's too much card advantage and some kind of clock. And so we just have to find a Brainstorm, Ponder, and keep playing the game. We find a Hydroblast, which is okay. It can counter maybe a Flame of Honor or maybe a Pyroblast from our opponent, so it's fine. Our opponent is going down to 9, so we can at least finish the game with 3 lightning bolts. It's unlikely, but possible, but we boarded 1 out, so we do not have lightning bolts remaining. And we are countering here the Flame of Honor. I think it's a good spot to get use of the Hydroblast. And our opponent has 1 card remaining, so I'm thinking it's kind of removal, maybe Swords, Plowshares, or Dress Down. And we do another land, so it's not good for us. We have 5-8 lands in our hand and battlefield, so it's the exact same amount as the control deck we are facing. And we found a Ponder, which is decent, and we are searching for Brainstorm, and our opponent is reacting to it. And he plays a Flame of Honor in response. Nothing we can do about it. Our opponent is drawing 2 fresh cards, and we see a Dragon Rage Channeler, a Core Steel Cutter, and a Bauble. But keep in mind, we can only draw 1 card at this time. So I'm willing here to shuffle and really find a Brainstorm and get punished and drawing another land. So we are at 9 lands. So if we do not draw a Brainstorm in our next turn, the game is pretty much locked out. And our opponent is threatening us with a Tamio. So if we, he will bury us in card advantage if we find no immediately Brainstorm. And also he is casting a Tunnel Replaner with Offspring. So I think on this stage of the game, there's nothing really in what we can draw. Even if we find now the Brainstorm, the game is locked from here, and we will save our time and get a fresh game 3 with starting on our side. And keep in mind that on Magic Online you have a chess clock, so we have about 10 minutes on our clock, and so it's not a good use of time to play it out and get maybe rid of your clock if you maybe will need it in the future. So we keep our configuration the same, so we are cutting 2 daisies and 1 lightning bolt. We have 1 lander here, but I think it's decent to keep. Our opponent is not a wasteland deck, so even if we miss on our second land drop, we can play a Brainstorm or Preordain. And I'm leading here with the Delver of Secrets because I have the intention to play the Brainstorm in our upkeep, and on the first thought is to find a second land and also to flip the Delver of Secrets. So that way I'm not leading with Dragon Rage Chandler, but our opponent has a prismatic ending, which is absolutely fine. We have a backup Dragon Rage Chandler, and we drew another Delver. So I'm leading here with the Preordain and hoping to find a land to keep our Brainstorms for later value. And we find a land with a lightning bolt underneath it, but it will shuffle it away with the fetch. And here I'm going to fetch. I think it's a good time for basic island because we saw the Magus, we saw the back to basics. So make sure that we have at least one basic sticking around so that we can cast our blue spells. And that is what I did here. So we have Delver Secrets, and we can continue with our brainstorm plan to find maybe another land, some action, or really a cutter would be fine. And our opponent is just scalping his hand with a ponder. So maybe he's looking for a Tunnel Trap Trainer, which would be nice because it will forces us to flip the Delver on the because he can block on the ground. So what we are looking for is really maybe a cutter. I think it's decent. Then compared with another land. I think it's okay, and maybe finding one of the blast, pyroblast, hydroblast, to have some interaction. So on our upkeep, we are playing the brainstorm to flip our Delver, and we see a fetch land and ponder, which is decent. So we put one land and spell back. So we can think what we want to show our opponent. I think it's fine to show the brainstorm. You can even make an argument for ponder. But we showed the brainstorm, flip our Delver, and have the option to do it again. And first things first, we attack, see if our opponent wants to play a Swords to Plowshares. So there's no Swords to Plowshares immediately, so that we can apply our second threat in form of Dragon Witch Chandler. And we have 3 card types in our graveyard: instant, sorcery, and land. So we need to find a creature or an artifact. And we have the Surveillant in our deck, so we can, at the end of the opponent's turn, we can play a Brainstorm or can just use the Surveillant to find the second card type in form of creature or artifact to apply more pressure. So we are going to crack. And with this play, we can apply Murktide on our turn. We see Delver of Secrets, it's perfectly fine. We will bind it to the graveyard to activate our Dragonwitch Chandler. So we have 6 attack on the battlefield, so we have a 2.5 turn clock. So our opponent has to do something about it. We will lead with the Ponder. And I'm really looking for Pyroblast, Force of Will, and Cutter. And we find the Pyroblast and the Hydroblast underneath. So I think it's better to keep the Pyroblast because it can counter Tunnel Trap Trainer and maybe interaction from our opponent. And with this said, we are going to attacks. And there's no need for casting the Murktide here. It will get rid of our Delirium. And our opponent showed us that he's running Supreme Verdict. And if we play the Murktide into it, it will be overcommitted. And here I'm willing to play the Pyroblast on the Brainstorm because I have the feeling that it's really a desperate Brainstorm. He's looking for answers because he doesn't play Swords to Plowshares, so he maybe has no removal for our creatures. And our opponent is responding with a Force of Will on the Pyroblast, which I think is absolutely fine, because the Pyroblast was pointed just to a Brainstorm alone, so not an action card for itself. And we have the option to play an emergency Brainstorm if we need, really. And I'm really thinking our opponent is searching for Flood of the Skies or Supreme Verdict, or maybe a singleton Swords to Plowshares or a Prismatic Ending. We will see. And our opponent is digging deeper with Ponder, so he can't cast Supreme Verdict. So he needs Plains and a Flood of the Skies to really get rid of this board. But even if our opponent does, we have the Murktide as a following threat, so no play here. So we will see, it's just a dress down, and I think it's absolutely fine. It will not change the clock. Our opponent is at 8 life. We have 6 points on the battlefield with dress down 4, so the clock will not change. So there's no need for fighting over a dress down. So we can play our ponder, get our defenses up, maybe finding a force of will, or even a lightning bolt would be pretty good because our opponent has a fetch land on the battlefield. So if he's going to fetch, we can end the game immediately. And I'm going to shuffle here because now we're really looking for a cutter and bolt, and just playing the bauble out to get another draw. And we see our opponent is going to draw a brainstorm, which is okay. And so he's likely committed in cracking the fetch land. And we draw a lightning bolt, which is pretty good because now we have 2 layers of protection. One thing is our opponent has to keep with the board, and even if our opponent finds a board sweeper, we can end the game if he decides to crack the Fluttered Strand, which he is likely going to do because he played the Brainstorm. So if we want to maybe get rid of some cards, he's willing to crack the fetch land, but foremost he's searching for an answer to our board, maybe in form of Swords of Plowshares or even maybe a Murktide for a blocker, I'm not really sure. So he can cast Supreme Verdict or Flood of the Skies, and he plays a Thermio at defense. So maybe he has another Brainstorm, or he's combining it with a Flame of Anno, which would be fine because he can block, get rid of 1 creature, draw 2 cards. I think it's okay. But if our opponent is going to play the telepath Flame of Honor, we can counter it, we can bolt in response, so the attack here is pretty much free. And we'll see what our opponent is going to do. And he's decided to block with the Delver of Secrets and fetch for the Flooded Strand. So we will see what our opponent is going to cast. I think Flame of Honor is really likely here. And indeed, it seems to be that it will be a Flame of Honor. Yes, it is. And in response to that, we are casting the Lightning Bolt and test if the coast is clear. We have Hydroblast and Force of Will as additional layer of protection. And we even see another Force of Will, which we can access with the Brainstorm in our hand. So I think the game is super closed here, and our opponent conceded the game.